Okay, I'm excited to be here with Ed today to talk about selling big ticket with really big margins by ending long sales cycles. And the way that we end long sales cycles and shorten them is by ending unqualified conversations. We only want to be having conversations with people who are qualified to actually buy our high ticket product. So this works if you're selling high ticket coaching, consulting, or even medical procedures like implants, stem cells, cosmetics. Over the past 3 years, there's been a lot of change in the high ticket marketplace, some big opportunities, as well as some big challenges as things have been really shifting in the economy and just people's understanding of work and buying things in general. So Ed is rare in that he's figured out a way simpler way to get your ideal clients and patients to buy from you faster, but also easier and in a fun way too. So it drives better quality leads to your business. And this process is called the $1 million interview method. Great conversations that effortlessly sell your dream client. The other thing to know about Ed is that he is a father of 7, which I think gives him a unique perspective on designing a business that is both simple and profitable. Because if you have 7 kids, you don't get to choose between time and money. You need to have both.
Yeah.
So, Ed, how you doing?
Awesome, Krista. Thanks so much for having. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Yes, like having the 7 kids, whether you have 1 kid, no kids, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, the goal is to design your business so you're doing it with people that you enjoy working with. And I'll tell you, having sold big ticket when I was back in dentistry, which I'll share that story in a minute. And both selling dentists into our coaching club at $20,000 up front and $1,500 a month, having sold high ticket dental procedures, and as well as right now we have programs with coaches we're selling from anywhere between like $7,000 up to $65,000. There's so many mistakes that happen that suck up people's time, which takes away the love of actually why they got into it in the first place. And so, today I want to share just kind of a few things that are working. And since you're someone who runs Facebook ads and traffic on YouTube for big ticket offers, I'm super excited to be with you because I think you have another unique perspective that people can learn from and appreciate as well. So,
yeah, thanks. It's nice to see what's going on in the market in a number of different niches at once and different platforms. A couple of things I'm seeing when it comes to ads and running ads for clients, which for high ticket is one of the more common ways to get clients, are 2 basic things. So number 1, it's getting more expensive, specifically appointment funnels and webinar funnels. Getting somebody to book in a call or to watch a webinar is getting more expensive. And then actually getting them to show up to the call after they book it or to watch the webinar after they register for it is getting even harder as people sort of get more familiar with these methods. They do their own research, honestly. Like they sign up for your thing, and then they look into you on their own, and you never actually get to talk to them. So that's one of the problems, is just like the cost. But the other thing is that these methods will actually filter out your best clients. So if you're selling high ticket, you're looking for people who value speed over something being cheap, right? They want something that's going to work fast, not necessarily save a buck. So you're looking for people with more money than time. And those people are not going to watch a 3-hour webinar or sign up for a phone call on their already busy calendar with someone that they don't know. So those are some big problems with specifically high ticket. It's just getting harder. The other thing, if you're selling books, like we do this for a client together, Ed, and it does work. It's just a lot of work. It costs about like over $100 usually to sell a $5 or $10 book.
yeah.
And then you've got your shipping costs. And so if you want to break even on that funnel, you have all this work to do up front with upsells and order bumps. So it's not a fast process to get a funnel like that working. 100%. So it's just not Yeah, it's just not as easy as it was maybe even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So what have you been,
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're nailing it. And I would say like a couple of things. One is like the first part is, the book funnel works, but what does it require? It requires a phone team
gotta write
and
a book.
well, you got to write a book, right? A webinar works, but what does it require? It requires you to be very, very good at sales copy. It requires you to be able to be very, very good at orchestrating a webinar. And it also presupposes a couple of things. One is I can get clicks and leads at a cost-effective rate that allows the rest of the process to work. Because I mean, I'm going to tell some good stories and bad stories on this, but like there's obviously exceptions to this rule. Like Russell Brunson and like Jason Fladley and some of these guys that are webinar experts, like when they say that it's working for them, they're not telling you the truth, but they are the pro amongst the pros. And usually if you look at the offers and the built-in audiences they already have, it really makes it harder for somebody who's either struggling with conversion rates right now to model that perfectly and do it. And I don't know, every time I've tried doing webinars in the past I noticed a couple things. One is, you nailed on the head, like who's my best customer? And is my best customer actually going to sit through a very structured webinar that has an application form at the end of it? And I know I'm getting on the phone with a phone call person, which then if you're a coach, you have to build out this whole machine to work like that. And a lot of times coaches do exactly what they hate doing, which is they're like, well, I'll suck it up for a period of time. I'll do all the sales calls myself. And then after a few weeks of that, they hate their life and they still have to make time for coaching. Books. I mean, I've written books and I've done the book funnel to webinar, like, you want a double chaotic life. The key thing, if you're going to do that, is that the book's got to be targeting very specifically who your top level 10 client is, which we'll talk about a little bit. Like when we talk about the interview method, it's very structured it does the exact opposite. It just goes right to the point of drawing in the exact person that you want spending money with you, who wants to spend money with you and enjoys the solution that you're going to provide them. Now, live challenges, virtual events. Now, I'm good friends with a couple of guys that are just crushing it with those things. Here's the thing they have. They have existing built-in audiences already. They have a long-term reputation. And even if they didn't have those and are starting from scratch, could it work? Yes. Does a 5-day challenge require a ton of effort and orchestration? And Kristen, this is my big point. Like, no one's afraid of working hard. No one's afraid of the orchestration. What the end of the day is does your offer actually convert? So why am I going to do a long virtual live event?
And you don't find out if your offer converts until the end when you've invested $1,000 in this event or.
Yes. I mean, do you have proof of concept that your offer works? And so what I decide to do is when I'm talking to my clients and I'm listening to their conversion problems and their rising cost problems or lack of targeting problems, once I start looking at their offer, and then I ask them, well, who is your level 10 client who's going to pay you happily, that you want to work with, that if he has this transformational insight, or if we myth bust, which we'll get into a little bit of the structure, they're going to part with their money immediately because you've demonstrated you can solve their problem. Who's that ideal person? And then let's get the right message in front of that person and see if it converts. And, when we did this with Dr. Bill Blatchford, we both were with Dr. Bill. When he hired me for a day of consulting and I went through like their numbers and I went through his, and I know the dental field, I know the medical practices very well, but I was like, hey, Dr. Bill, like none of what you're telling me in person, like face-to-face, is being communicated in your marketing. How you're helping people is not being communicated. And so instead of us hiring a copywriter, a designer, and building out all these complicated funnels, I said, let me just interview you. And we set up a Zoom call just like this one right here. And he's selling a $65,000 package. While I prefer face-to-face because there's some relationship things, and especially because we do a half day of consulting now, but like that thing sells $65,000 packages every single month for Blatchford. And I'll just share with everybody what we figured out. During the interview, I asked him a few very specific questions. He shared a story about him and his wife, and about how on the surface, by the way, he spent a full day with me, never shared the story with me. I reviewed all his marketing materials, never saw the story. I read his book, never heard the story. I then am on an interview with him, and he's like, Ed, in 1985, we had what everyone thinks was like an all-American dental practice. We were doing 2.5 million a year. And back then that was like really a lot of money. Like $2.5 million dental practice is still very, very successful. However, not if there's no profit, right? And his wife turned to him at the end of a Christmas party and said to him, this is just like every other month. We're sitting here cleaning up the scraps as everyone has already left. And he's like, Ed, it hit me. I needed to escape the low profit dental trap. And I'm sitting there writing feverishly. I'm like, there's the hook. And so what happened was, while I went into that interview thinking we were going to interview him about how to get more dental implant cases and more comprehensive dentistry, because those are bigger cases, we ended up flipping the whole advertising to be about escaping the low profit dental trap, because in every market, there's these myths. In dentistry, the myth is, and this is probably almost in every business, by the way, but in dentistry, the myth is if you're a $1 million practice, or if you're a multi-million-dollar practice, or if you're a $3 million practice, you're world class, like you're doing amazing. And the myth bust there was, you're not doing amazing if your take-home profit is like half of what the industry standard is. What if you could only do $1 million a year, but your profit was greater than doing $3 million a year, having 18 employees? And so, that was like an example of like busting that myth, highlighting the pain in the offices that they cater to. All of a sudden, people come maybe buy the book or go through that interview. They're getting on the phone with the sales reps. And the way Blashford does it is they want to talk to everybody to make sure they actually qualify for the coaching. But my point being is that you would never get that experience that people are getting through a webinar. You could get it in a book if people actually read nowadays, but like that was a very small piece. Now we were able to take that marketing and move it everywhere. So that's just one example of how we're able to take something that's kind of cold, stale, not converting great, and just transform it very, very quickly and start getting sales, which then gives you the confidence and feedback of, okay, let's go deeper on this loop. Now, since then, we've done 2 other interviews on 2 other pain points that have come up, but it's really, in my opinion, it's one of the best ways to introduce your offer to your ideal client. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also can be a really good companion to a book, because watching somebody and actually hearing them say it in their own words is a different experience than reading a book anyway. And again, we're talking about shortening a sales cycle. Book leads are great leads, but it's not a short sales cycle. They need to read the book, they need to consume it. So it's not the same thing as, a 30-minute or 1 hour interview that they can watch.
Yeah, but also too, like that's such a great point. So like, let's say you're watching this, you have a book, right? Or you have a podcast, like we can go back and forth on this, right? It's like, if you have a book, the first thing people do after they buy your book is they go look to see if you've been interviewed. At least that's what I do. I want to go consume your insight, right?
Or I'll buy books after watching an interview. That's got me interested in it.
Yeah, and they work together. And the same thing is with like challenges. When we did, I know I'm kind of rambling, but I'll share another case study. Is like when I was working with Roland Frazier on a project, we took his challenge buyers and we direct mailed them, right? And all I did was my dogs are nuts. Hey, get out of here. Go. I took his buyers, I direct mailed them. And all I did was get them to re-raise their hand. Now, this is something I teach in the half-day consulting when I'm with private clients. But one of the best ways anyone listening to this can start making more money is you go to people that have been through your book funnel, your webinar funnel, your challenge your virtual live event, and say they spend $55, $19, $97, right? Well, the reason why you run book funnels is not just to like, because your book's great. It's because you're just getting a buyer. I mean, we're just trying to get buyers, which sifts out a lot of people. But you've already spent 90 something dollars to get them as a customer. Why not spend 97 cents to send them a direct mail piece, letting them know about a rare opportunity to work directly with you in your coaching club, but we'll name it something different so it's actually sexy and attractive and people want to be a part of it. And then when they respond, what happens is some people are like, Ed, I don't want to do phone calls. I don't want to do anything. Okay, that's fine. Well, that's where you have them raise their hand and say, I want to do this. And that's where we do an interview about your high ticket coaching club, this unique thing that you're doing. And that's where you introduce like the interview to them. That's one way to use it. Now we did that with Roland, and I think I spent like $1,500 on direct mail, and we had $63,000 in sales by the end of the month, right? And then we rolled that into launching his Consulting for Equity program, promoted the Zoom call and then the interview to a big list. And that thing, I mean, I did I think over 7 figures in less than 60 days. Here's why I want to share that with you though, is that you think people are going through whatever things you've already sold them, like the challenge. So many people said to me, like when they responded to that, because I was helping with the chats and the sales on that. We didn't get on any phone calls with people, by the way. They never watched the whole challenge. They watched day 1 or they watched parts of day 2. So just because they
stick for like more than one day in a multi-day event online is tough.
Right. So you're assuming though, as the host, Krista, that you did your whole sales pitch and you're assuming you got 300 people buy your challenge. You're thinking your conversion rate was like, and say you get 10 sales, you're thinking your conversion rate's only 3%. Well, maybe it's actually more like 15 to 20%, but you didn't get the other people to consume.
Problems with a webinar is like you actually have to get them to consume to the point where they see the pitch at the end.
1,000%. Now, like in dentistry, I know I'm kind of bouncing around a bit, but this is just great examples because it works in anything that sells high ticket services, agencies, in dentistry, for example, or any kind of business that you sell high-end services. There's this assumption that people actually know. Like, so dental implants, the number one thing that comes up with dental implants is it's expensive, right? And so right now, if it's expensive, it might be painful, it might take a period of time. However, they're frustrated. They have missing teeth, they have dentures, they're not able to eat the food that they love, they feel unconscious. So those are all things. But most doctors are using very cookie cutter marketing that makes them look exactly like everybody else. Well, the problem with that is, especially right now, and this is across the board in every industry, is that there's big franchises running the same types of ads, but guess what? They have deeper pockets than you. They got better commercials than you. They got all those things. So how do you differentiate? Is well, you actually put a face with the brand, and you actually answer the questions people have, and you actually show them how the solution to it's not that expensive. And then you go through all the financing issues. Now, what I found is I see this in coaches, consultants, and I also see this in dentistry. Usually when we think of coaches or we think of successful people in some of these markets, you think of charismatic, they're up on stage and they have that flair. Well, that's like only 5% of the market. There's so many smart, gifted people that can help people in consulting and coaching in medical practices. And when I work with dentists, I would say the majority got into it to help people. They didn't want to be like a commercial advertiser marketer. They wanted to help people, and they're good people.
Not necessarily the best implant dentist.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Like back in the Extreme Makeover days, everyone would know who like Bill Dorfman was because he was on Extreme Makeover. And well, Bill fit the part. But the reality is that you could take somebody that's a little bit shy, a little bit quieter, and if you actually set the context up with good questions, good conversations, like I can pull out of them what people need to know. And then the second thing I do on that, and this is true even in other businesses, is like you say, like, hey, who's the best person who are the best people on your team to sell, who can sell dentistry or who can sell those services better than you? Well, then let me interview them for 15 minutes as well. Like Susie's the best at talking about money. Let me talk to Susie,
I think one of the things with, like there's a dental procedure that I'm looking to get done. And one of the issues is, and I think this can be applied also to coaching, I don't get a second chance at doing it. Like I have to choose who's going to do it once. And if I'm not happy with it, I don't just get like a redo, like, oh, I like with buying a shirt and you can just buy a different one if you're not happy with it. So, and the same thing with coaching. Like if you are going to choose to invest for whether it's 8 weeks or a year or whatever, but it's anyway, $20,000 or $50,000, you don't just get a do-over on that. You can't try every coach. So there needs to be a level of trust built up that you're making the right choice.
Yeah. So that's so good. So we're the way that most people so I'll ask two questions. These are rhetorical. Like, do you really feel like the office that is sending you out 50% off exam and x-ray and thing is
implant into my skull because of a flyer? Like, sorry.
Yeah. And the same thing is in coaching is like, oh, you went through my webinar and get on a strategy call with my 29-year-old sales rep whose only job is to sell me. And I can tell you, I'm going through a couple different stories at once. I want to get into like where that fear, uncertainty, and doubt gets squashed. But I want to back up a second here.
One thing I want to say, because you mentioned about the salespeople, that I've seen a lot with the appointment funnel side of things is that when you're running that business model, it creates this cash flow pressure that causes you, I've seen happen numerous times, causes you to take on bad fit clients. So either it's your salesperson who is incentivized by commission, or even if it's you on the phone, but in the back of your mind that you've already have like $5,000, $10,000 spent this month on ads, and you're trying to get to the close on the call instead of actually trying to see if this is a person who's a fit for your service.
Yeah.
So like having that high pressure, like tons of money out the door model, I think is tough. And what you are suggesting with this new method is instead of just trying to talk to everybody, you should have an asset that brings the right people to you.
Why do I got to search for your prices? Why do I not know what your coaching club is? Why are we being so cryptic on that? Like, right? Like, so for example, when I interviewed like Dr. Bill, I was able to bring up what the cost of his coaching club was. And it was $65,000. And I said, well, Dr. Bill, that sounds kind of expensive, right? And he says, well, not at all. And he was able to like give away, and I, by the way, like we didn't like, I would prep it right now a little more appeal, but he's a professional at selling it. And he's so great at explaining, like, no, it's actually free for people. And here's why it's free. You're only going to pay for the first month. Like your first month is what it's going to cost you an investment. From 30 days on, this program is you're going to be doubling your production within 6 months. Your net profit's going to go up immediately after the first month after we fix. And he had this, and this. The same thing was like when I interviewed Roland with Consulting for Equity, like if most consultants are costing themselves years of net worth because they're giving away their time for free in hopes that they have a piece of equity. And Roland's model was, well, you should be getting paid. And then through that process, they're going to want to give you equity. So your $7,500 is, if you want to go buy a franchise for $150,000 and have all that risk, or I'm going to show you a new skill set that you can start applying to get new clients like this month, which is going to pay for itself. Chris, I gotta tell you one thing though. My wife and I, like my daughter Keegan, 2 years ago, started having long haul COVID. Like she got COVID in October. By November, she was laying on the couch. It felt like I had a kid who had mono for 24 hours a day, for 8 months, by the way, like 9 months. And so we went through the ringer. We went through we went to every hospital, and one of the biggest challenges you have when you've tried a lot of things and you keep failing, okay, is you start getting this like feeling of like, well, nothing's going to work for me. And I will tell you that collectively, Noel and I probably listened to 100 and something podcasts. Why were we listening to podcasts? Well, because interviews are such a better way to consume information so much faster. And the ones that we trusted, that's where we built our trust. Now, how do you build trust? Because not all interviews are going to build trust, by the way. And the interview, and I'll say the $1 million interview method that I've designed is, it's not like you're coming on my podcast as a guest, like when I interviewed Jesse Itzler or David Goggins or Dominic Cruz or people that are just there to tell their life story.
It's not just entertainment.
It's not just entertainment. We have a plan. And we're going to get them through the plan. But the big plan has to do with, besides introducing the doctor, or the expert coach or the consultant, because that's only frankly, no one really cares about you. What they want to know is in the first 5 to 7 minutes, what solution are you offering? And they're not even thinking that in their head. That makes them say to themselves, oh my gosh, I've never thought of that. Or holy crap.
Yeah.
That's the exact opposite.
Demonstrating that you understand their problem is the kind of the first step, because I don't really care what new solution you have unless I know that you understand the pain that I'm in.
And that in the solution, yes, exactly. So so here, where do we get that from? Well, I've worked with, the biggest problem that agencies have, I'll just talk about agencies, for example. So the biggest problem agencies have is, okay, we start running traffic for people. We then have to build a team. Well, my media buyers aren't as good as I am. So now I got a problem with them. So now I'm a professional manager of media buyers instead of doing the craft that I love, right? And so where the myth busting concept with consulting for equity was, the way most agencies tried to solve that was they would give away all their services for free in exchange for equity. So now the problem with that is they never get paid until the owner gets profitable. So they end up having 3 or 4 clients like that. They have all this equity.
Well, you're controlling the back end of their business. You're not controlling their cost of goods sold if you're running e-com ads or
Correct. So what if you flip that? What if instead of you running ads, you actually had a half day of consulting where you charge $7,000? And in that $7,000, we're going to do a deep dive into your strategy, into your business. And then we're going to build out a plan that suits you. So the agency owner gets paid up front. They end up getting paid for their services because they have a team. And then if the owner, based on how we structured the half-day consultations, wants them to be a part of the equity ownership team, that's a separate thing than the services. So we showed them how to get paid up front, monthly, and also get equity. And most agency owners would go, I didn't know you could do that. And we go, yeah, because no one's shown you that it's possible.
The right person who wants to get things done in a day and pay more money for the pleasure of getting it done in 24 hours and not attracted to, a 3-month minimum retainer. Like the person that you want to attract is somebody who doesn't want to wait 3 months to see a result from the time that they're putting in.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. So anyhow, those are the myth busting things. With, when, I'm trying to give you another example here. One of the other examples that I was on a call with a gentleman yesterday who sells to high paid professionals and medical practices. He sells an investing course. And I said, well, who's your target market? And they went through high paid professionals and doctors of all kinds, not, and very successful people with excess money. And he's selling how to trade 30 minutes a day and get all these returns back, right? And I said, well, did you know that most high-paid professionals who are in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, they're not buying that for themselves. They're buying that for their kids or their in-laws so that they could do it together. And he's like, wow, I never thought of that. And so the reason I share that is because there's two lessons in that. Number one is usually your market can be split up in multiple ways and communicated to differently. That's number one. Number two is I built trust with him, not because of who I am as a father of 7 and I'm a good person and I have integrity and I look good and my branding's really pretty and I send out these professional flyers. I built trust with him because I pointed out something that was outside of his awareness that like flipped the light bulb. It was a perceptual shift. As Travis likes to say, it was insight,
So what's different about this interview process that you've kind of nailed down and we're going through here? That's like, how is that different than recording a webinar? If it's like the same length of time, why is it going to work better than some other video format like a VSL or a webinar?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. Number one is, first of all, when I look back on my history, so like when we went into dentistry, and we were selling like these $2,000 courses at with using a 20-page sales letter. This was back when direct mail was the only option. And then I would do these teleseminars. And what happened was I would do these teleseminars to sell my $20,000 package. Okay. Now, what I would do is I would have somebody, I hired Tim Paulson at one point, I hired James Malinchak at another point to interview me and to interview my students. By the way, it's another advanced strategy. Mm-hmm. And the consumption of that is just 20 times higher than a talking head, like telling their own story or pitching something.
Much more fun to listen to a conversation than to watch a presentation, I guess.
So number one, consumption. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So when I go on YouTube or I go on, if I'm on Facebook and what's going to stop me from scrolling? Well, I see like the subject line, headline, but then it's an interview. I have no sales defense wall up already, right? It's a very organic thing. Okay. So it's like, it's consumption is number one. The other thing I was going to say is that like, the reason why that's so important is because most people aren't doing it as a sales mechanism. And so, you could go on 1,000 different podcasts and you can hope that people are actually going to listen to your stuff. And you're going to hope that the host actually asks all the questions in the right sequence so that you do your best sales presentation. But I've done that. And what ended up happening for me is when I was promoting my book, time collapsing, I ended up on all these podcasts. And man, I'll tell you, it was just the biggest grind rather than just creating one piece of content that's structured well and then using either ads or using organic cold reach outs, which we'll talk about in a second, to do all that. Number two is that if you have like a myth busting frame, we talked briefly about this, but if I listed out all the beliefs your ideal client's holding, and in a structured format, I'm able to like blast all those myths, like whatever their current plan is, we're able to blast all those myths. There's an authority shift that happens automatically in the consumers of the consumer's brain. They're like, wow, I never thought of that. Oh, that makes total sense. Oh, that solves all of my problems because it's easier, it's faster, it's overall less expensive, even though the investment might be big, it's going to make me more money or it's going to get an end result. That you got to myth bust. That's number one. And then number two is you got to handle all the objections right there on the interview. And if you're not good at that, that's where I come in play. So if you stink at selling, well, guess what? You need somebody on that format to help sell for you.
What's
a couple
out of you?
What's that?
You can like pull the selling out of somebody who doesn't do it naturally.
Yeah, well, I find that people really struggle with like talking about price. And so it's like, okay, so what's the investment in your coaching program? Well, it's $18,000 a year. Okay, great. So if I break that down, who's your ideal client? Oh, my ideal client is a consultant who sells $20,000 packages. Okay. So the investment into your $18,000 program is actually free, because after you help them get, or how fast will they get a client, Krista? Oh, probably in the first 15 days. So really, their investment in you for the whole year is paid off in the first 15 days. Yeah. Okay. I mean, do you have any examples of that? And that's where like the fear, uncertainty, and doubt comes into play. It's like, well, yeah, let me tell you a couple stories. And that's where I help them with it, because they got to identify 3 different stories. The stories should entail one male, one female, and then something that allows you to, unless your whole audience is male or your whole audience is female, obviously.
Pushing to women or something. Yeah.
Yes, but I call it like your range of all possibilities. Like case study, like matrix, is we're building belief around this, right? And then we say the claim, which is this will pay for itself in less than a month. We squash the money, okay, and then we give them three or 4 examples that back it up. That shatters money right away. So that's another myth busting, then objection busting. But I'll tell you one more funny story. Like, so when I went into dentistry, because this is the other thing, is that when we do like our half-day consulting together, I meet with them for a half day, we zero in on their most profitable client. I've said this like 4 times already in this interview. But the reason is because the rest of the market will follow your most profitable client. You don't go after the rest of the market and hope your most profitable client shows up. Now, I'll give you an example. Like, so when I went into dentistry, and we were selling $2,000 packages, and then I was selling a mastermind. I was following the old Dan Kennedy model. And I was young. I was still learning how to market in dentistry while I was in it, full disclosure. I just threw myself in. We got after it. I didn't even know like dental implant doctors were the best doctors to deal with for big cases, and there's other niches, by the way, I don't want to exclude them, but just for the case of example. But I wrote an ad for this one dental implant doctor. He was talking to me, and he's like, well, I need more cases. And that was in the beginning. And so one of the things I did, Krista, is I started getting on the phone with my clients. They'd buy the $2,000 package. I get on the phone with them, and I would do free consulting because I wanted to learn the market as fast as I can. Well, he said, I need dental implant cases. And I said, well, who exactly are people that would want implants? And he said, well, people with dentures. Now, this is when my parents were still alive. They were in their like mid to late 70s. And I was like, okay, cool. So I drove over to my parents' house. They only live like 4 blocks away. And they're sitting there having lunch. And I have my notepad. And I'm like, okay, Mom, Dad, what do you hate about your dentures? And it was so funny because my dad had full mouth, my mom had partials. And they tell me everything they hate about them. And so I literally wrote a 3-paragraph ad, gave it to him to run in his local newspaper. I kid you not, within a month, he sends me a note back. They ran a $300 ad. It generated $81,700 something in the first 4 weeks of running it. Okay. Now we lead generated. So there's lead generation on that. Here's what's funny about that. I then gave that same ad to a dental implant dentist just 6 months ago, but I told him to read it in a video ad, and it still works like gangbusters. Now, why am I sharing that? Because when you do an interview, you can get really, really, by the way, if anyone knows what I just did there, is I just gave another concrete example of micro-targeting, going after a more profitable client. And what we do now is we have the interview when they generate a lead. So we promote the interview. Like Dr. So-and-so was just featured on this new podcast, Experts Tell All, blah, blah, blah. Here's what's revealed. So people want to listen to a podcast and an interview. They don't want to listen to a sales pitch, right? So, I mean, that's one of the other things. You get way more consumption. You get to myth bust. You get to lay out all your offers. So now guess what happens? when they call your office or they reach out to you via email, they're asking you questions like, hey, I really want to join your XYZ club. I just had one question.
Right.
All they're really asking is, this is them doing logical justification. They're going to tell you something specific about them. And all they're really wanting you to do, I mean, you got to be honest, it's got to have integrity, and you got to be able to help them, right? All they're really asking for you is to say, yeah, exactly. Krista, this will work for you. And here's why. And that's it. And then here's would I be able to send you a link? Would you like, do you know where to order? Blah, blah, blah. That's a totally different experience.
Your education process done before the call takes place, or trying to do the education on the call, which is kind of painful, time consuming process.
Yeah. I mean, I would do, like, right now, whoever's listening, like, if you find that you're dealing with unqualified prospects that you're end up on either face-to-face with or on the call with your team, or you're wondering why your team's conversion rate's low, I would create something like the $1 million interview method. And I would have your salespeople, your assistants, your executive assistants, your front desk, whomever it might be, say to them before they come into their office, hey, Miss Ritchie, before we get on the call tomorrow, here's a link to the doctor's interview, or here's a link to Ed's interview, or here's a link to Dr. Bill Blatchford's interview, or here's a link to Roland's interview with Ed O'Keefe. Please watch that before we get on the phone call. Mm-hmm. And then like an hour before they get on the phone call, you can send them a reminder. And maybe you go 3 days beforehand. I mean, in fairness to some people, and you say, hey, did you get a chance to watch that? And they're like, well, no, I was going to. Okay, here, do me a favor. Let's reschedule our call till later today. Please watch that before we ever jump on a call. Okay. And that's the secret of dropping your strategy calls from 30 minutes, 40 minutes to 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, without doing hard selling. Like Kevin Nation is probably one of the best phone closers in the world. Kevin's uniquely built. Majority of people cannot close like he can.
Well, we can't have every skill. I mean, if you have a specific skill for your market, whether you're doing dental implants or you're coaching, consulting in a specific arena, you need to like lean into your skill set and not try to be a jack of all trades. And okay, now I need to learn how to sell, and now I need to learn how to copyright, and now I need and you can't, there's only so much outsourcing that you can do too. If you can instead create an asset that does those things for you instead of like 12 employees, that would be nice.
Well, yeah, right. Totally right. And now here's the thing. Do you want to do a challenge? Like you just feel like you're committed to running a challenge? Do that.
Yeah.
But do it after you do the interview, because your offer might be awful. And by doing the interview, you get people to start pinging you, private messaging you questions. Well, guess what you do to them? You add them to your interview, or you add them as post follow-up videos. You know what I mean? There's so many ways to utilize it.
I run challenges and different live events for lots of clients. And one of the things I see happen is they're very effective at like scooping up all of your unused equity in your list, in your contacts, and you get this really nice cash injection that month.
Yeah.
Then how do you make that happen every month? There's only so many challenges that you can run before people start getting blind to them and like, oh yeah, she's just doing that again. So you need to create an asset that you can do once and then leverage for years. Like the ads that we're running for Dr. Blatchford. I mean, how long ago did you do that interview with him?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've done 3, and that was over 18 months ago, something like that. It still works, still converts,
Instead of like, hey, okay, Blatchford, you need to do a 5-day challenge for dentists. Great. Now try to do 6 of those a year. Like it's not a machine that you build once and then it works. It's something that you need to continue to put time and energy and money into. Like that's what live events are for. So like, I think that they're good to have in your marketing stack to run a few times a year. But if you're relying on that as your main driver, it's not going to stop taking your time and energy and money to do it.
No, couldn't agree more.
So, I wanted to back up 1 second. So I agree with you that this kind of interview style is way better than a webinar or a VSL, because in my experience, like I watch a lot of podcasts, and there's this kind of parasocial relationship that happens where if you're listening to a conversation, you're kind of mentally interjecting what you would be saying, like participating, right?
Yeah.
But I find myself doing that. Maybe I'm weird. But so that's like, I definitely agree about that. And you were touching on why this is better than a podcast, right? So if you could just go on a series of podcasts, you're saying that this, like the interview that you've constructed is better because, like what I heard you saying is that you have more control over actually getting your message out there. Whereas a podcast host, their main concern is entertaining their audience, not selling your product.
Yeah, but also you might not get like, I have this system called straight to the money. Like I have this like process, like straight to the money. Where's our ideal client? How do we get our message right in front of our ideal client? Going on 20 podcasts is not going to get that to you. And here's the other thing I found out about podcasts. You go on podcasts, they might not release it for 6 to 8 to 12 weeks.
They're baking them.
I mean, what the hell's going on? I mean, I got to make money today. Like we got to like start. I want to figure out if this is a business I want to like. I mean, come on, my spouse is wondering my new coaching business. Like, I mean, everyone who's watching this got to experience it at some level. Like I don't have that time. That's why I've always liked paid ads at some level, even if it's $50 a day. Like, let's go target our ideal client. Let's put an offer in front of them. But we got to get them to consume the offer and see how they're going to sell it. And I don't like getting on the phone call with a lot of people. So I've designed the business to be as much phoneless selling, and we instruct our clients how to do that as well. But that's number one. I mean, you want to know if your idea or your offer is going to work well, and you got to get it consumed. And this is the best way to do that. Number two is if you have multiple niches, you can segment out like, well, Ed, how does this work for people who already have leads and customers? Ed, how does this work for somebody who's brand new, which I know is something we plan on talking about. How does this work for somebody who's only can do this 2 days a week? Like now I can start sub-segmenting all those things. Then I can give it a video team. We can cut those things up. Those become lead ads. Those ads drive them to the webinar. They consume the whole thing. You can build out, I mean, if you were going to go get a copywriter to write you a full sales letter, upsells, I mean, it's going to cost you a good one, $25K, plus they're going to want royalties. Okay.
And it's going to take a lead time. Like they're going to need to, that's going to take weeks or months to
same thing on a webinar. And guess what? They can get it totally wrong. I'm pretty confident that most of them are going to get it wrong the first few times, which you and I don't have time. Right? We got to bust through the clutter. We got to solve people's concerns over this economic crisis that's going on and show why our solution is better than putting it off. Putting it off, like your client's not doing anything is an actual decision they're making. And so before you and I got on this today, I said, one of the reasons why you actually got to you have to have, like, for example, if you watch the Joe Rogan show, right? Joe will ask his guests for 5 minutes. So what do you got going on? Like near the end, like, oh, well, we got this new brand. And guess what? They're going to get, one of my buddies was talked about, one of his companies was talked about, they do stem cells. They were just talked about on the Rogan show. And Rogan, because they work with a lot of professional fighters. And so Rogan talks about them all the time. And it's only for 5 or 6 minutes, right? And they get flooded, right? So they need an interview to put, actually, we're scheduling it late this month. They're going to do an interview because they're getting 400 leads a day. They need an interview to filter out all the leads because they don't want 400. They want 40 committed, right? And I'm sure people...
The Joe Rogan experience is a pretty broad group of people. So it's like you're going to get all kinds of leads.
Right. And when you go on these podcasts, you can't control that stuff. And so, I think I just went in a full circle on that. But what else? You can target your niches. You can bring up all the issues you have. You can do multiple. Like I was talking to a new client who's got a $35,000 package, but he's got a $35,000 package in the beginning, sells a 6-week intensive. And then I said, well, what happens after they're done with that? And he said, well, we have another thing. But this is what he said to me. He goes, but I don't sell it that hard. And I'm like, well, let's do an interview after they graduate your 6 weeks. Let me sell hard for you, but in a very elegant way. Like, like if you start thinking about it, you got to install beliefs in your ideal prospect. They got to realize doing it on your own is not an option, because doing it on your own actually equals failure. Okay. Being by yourself and isolating yourself until you figure stuff out is the wrong move. You need to get in a group that's already figured it out, and you need to be led by a mentor. Okay. So we start building the path and the bridge. Like, this is failure, this is success. And the person's in the middle, they want to be a part of the success, but they're afraid to invest the money, because they might be wanting to buy a new boat this summer, like for their lake home, right? You see our silly decisions. Mm-hmm. But if we're able to then communicate, well, you're going to not only be able to buy a boat, but you're going to be able to buy the jet ski, and you're going to be able to put an addition on your house because you're in this circle. These guys are failing miserably that you're not even going to be able to afford the boat this summer. You know what I mean? So there needs to be somebody on the call who's doing that price justification, who's hitting those objections if the core person struggles a little bit with that.
Yeah. And I think, an interview like this is a good way to get that message across, that this is an investment that you're going to actually, I'm offering to help you make money, or you're going to get a result. You're not just throwing away $50,000. And this is a good way to do that. It's better than just saying to somebody in ad copy, you need to invest in yourself. You need to get a mentor. Like, how convenient for you. You're telling me I need to get a mentor, and you happen to be a mentor. Like,
yeah, totally.
Build that trust. You can't just say it in an ad. That's just, And everybody says that. So it's like, what makes you different, and how can you demonstrate that it's actually gonna work this time? So I want to ask really quickly, how does somebody know that this is the right option for them? Like, what kind of person should do this interview right away, and what kind of person do you think should go another direction?
Well, there's two things with that, and I'll answer that question. Number one is, it's just not an interview. Like, when you work with me, we do a half day of consulting together, and we go over your whole business model. So that's number one.
Somebody who shouldn't do this is somebody who doesn't have a clear offer, is not clear.
Oh yeah. I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you definitely who shouldn't, right? So it's very obvious.
With your half day of consulting, you can help with that, though.
Yeah. So, it's very obvious if you have a $3,000, $7,500, $15,000, $30,000 plus offer, this should be a no-brainer. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons. One is I would prefer that if I'm going to help you sell your high ticket, that it's at least 7,500 and above. And so if you're like, well, I only have a 3,000. Well, when we work together, we're going to talk about bumping that to 7,500. Quick example. I have a guy who I'm helping in the real estate market. He's like, yeah, I just did the promotion. We were selling my program, like all these master classes for $198. And I was like, $198. I'm like, man, you could have sold 6 installments at $198. And he was like, what? I'm like, if they're like, they want the result, they don't care. Like $198, they just told you they're willing to part with $198. Just add 6 installments on that. Add 11 installments. Add a couple, one call a month. You have a mastermind. But you just took instead of ascending people, you just built your program to be a $2,400 program instead of a $198 transaction. So, you see how quickly we can do that. And since I'm behind the scenes looking at so many big ticket offers like you are as well, and how people are selling, there's a lot of borrowed wisdom on that, right? So that's number one. Number two is, obviously, I think I've already said, like, you need to have an offer, and I like to say you need to have at least sold a couple and helped people. Because if you haven't helped people and demonstrated that at any level, give away free consulting until you do that, because we don't even know if your process or method works, right? Who it's an absolute no-brainer for is, look, you have leads on your list, you have past book buyers, you have past challenge buyers, you have past, buyers of any kind. There's nothing better than a quick, I call it a boomerang offer. Send them right to the interview, and we will sell, minimum, I mean, you're just going to sell out. You're going to sell multiple 5 figures, if not 6, and launch a new 7-figure business model, you know? But, yeah. And I mean, I think that's just, you know,
So
like
lots of people that have offers like that, in my experience, have kind of an offer suite. They have a lot of different things going on from being in business for a while. When you do the interview, do you focus on just like one thing, or how do you do that?
yeah, I mean, I think it starts with who their best client is and who do they want to attract more. So one of the things we do is we look at, we build it into like a quadrant, and there's more to this, but like it simply put, it's who's your level 10 ideal client that if you only worked with that client, and you had 100 of them, you'd probably never have to work ever again. And you'd be happier than ever. You have more time than ever, you know, and we get clear on that. And if you're sitting there going like, well, Ed, I don't know who that is. I mean, that's why we work on it together. You know, that's why like it's part of consulting where we pull it out. Like, well, let's pretend we knew. Like, let's imagine like the world had no obstacles and you could pick that person. And it, you know, Chris, it may even start with like one client, one time, right? Like my dental implant doctor. I was like, wow. So we launched a whole licensing business after that one experience because I listened to what the path was telling me. Wow, this guy spent $300, just made 81,000. Let's go get more of him, right? And then let me raise my price from 2,000 to 20,000, and then let's add licensing and we'll build marketing materials. So we built a whole multi 7-figure business based on that one case study. Okay, and coaches and clients and people can do that. So that's number one. And then I call that like the tip of the spear, because you can have multiple niches, but you want to lead with your solving the problem of your ideal client. And then if it requires us to do 2 different interviews or add in a couple different subtopics, then yes, we can do that. I wouldn't want to talk about like 4 or 5 products. I wouldn't. If I had a great mentor who was CEO of a $500 million company. And when I showed him my ascension model one time, he said, I would just take your highest ticket offer, and instead of waiting last to offer that, let's offer that first. And so if they just bought your book, let's just bring them into the high ticket. And if they disqualify themselves from that, then they can start going down the ladder and work themselves back up.
Yeah, some of the coaches I've worked with have had that same model where it's like you're selling your main thing, your aspirational thing that works for your ideal client, and then naturally that's what everybody wants. Like everybody wants to be your ideal client. So you're going to get people who are not qualified, and then you develop the downsells that are appropriate for where those people are at.
Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. And also to like your lifestyle, one more thing on that, Chris, is like your lifestyle, like just because we could create another low ticket offer doesn't mean we should, right? It just might be more like if you don't have to touch it, then fine. That's one thing. And if it helps us send people, that's even better. But sometimes people get caught in this trap of like, well, our high ticket program is, it's gotten a little plateaued. So let's create a lower ticket program. Well, now you might be working twice the amount, making less money, and now your focus goes off your highest ticket. So like Blatchford only has like 2 levels. You come in at entry point, you're either up high, then he has his alumni, and that's it. And could there be argument that he could do more? Sure, but it works. You know, it works for him.
Yeah, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Well, he doesn't. That's what they want. Like that's what they want. They built their whole business around that. So good for them.
So if I'm like, I have the high ticket offer and I definitely want to do an interview with you to have this asset, what are we doing? What am I getting? And what am I giving you for it?
Well, I mean, I think first reach out to me. You can email me at edokeefeshow@gmail.com. Probably easier is to PM me on one of my socials, Ed O'Keefe. I have 2 of them up there. Just to let me know, like, hey, Ed, I'm interested in the $1 million big ticket method, and I'll send you the details. We have an in-person offer and we have a Zoom offer. And those are obviously different investments. And I'm not going to give the dollar amount simply because we're raising prices soon. So I will say that very shortly, the in-person is going to be $25,000. It's currently, well, I can always edit this. It's currently $15,000 for in-person and then $7,500 for Zoom. Then Zoom's going to go up to $12,500. The in-person, I'll just stick with that for now, is you get when I come out or they come here, they get 3.5 hours of consulting where we break down their business, go over everything, and they also get the interview. And the interview can last anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour. If we only do 30 minutes, I'll probably have them do some other things like we'll do some micro videos. We're gonna do a few video ads for them as well, like scripts for them, so they could use that for their Facebook and YouTube ads to help promote the video. Okay. The other thing they will get, and it's different for like our high ticket coaches versus our medical practices, but they will get some front end advertising, and they're also going to get, like our coaches and stuff, they're going to get some cold reach out scripts if they have VAs that want to start reaching out to their market. And then for both the coaches and the dentists and doctors, because I'm speaking at a med spa clinic or a seminar soon, so that'll be a first for me. We're going to show them our boomerang letter and how to use that indirect mail, slide broadcast, text, and an email to get people that are already in their circles of influence, any of their lists, to boomerang back to this interview and start signing up for their offer.
Yeah, that sounds amazing to me, because it sounds like what you get is like a much easier, funner way to replace a webinar. But you get the consulting ahead of time to make sure that it's actually going to be good. And then you get the coaching sort of after the fact to actually get like traffic to that and get it in circulation. So it's like launching an entire campaign in a day or two.
Yeah. And like, obviously I'm gonna do my homework. So we'll do some prep work together. I'll want to know who your ideal client is. I'll review your sales process. I will share what we're doing with our different clients that are working and what I've seen behind the scenes of other high ticket offers, and what they're doing to have success with it, and then apply it to your business. So you get to do it the way you want to do it and make the money you want and spend time with your family and, travel, do whatever you want to do, so. Amazing.
Well, I'm in, it sounds good.
Yeah. So just have anyone who's interested, just PM me on Facebook or email me at edokeefeshow@gmail. And I think that's all I got, Krista.
There we go. All right. Well, I'm sure these interviews do take a lot of your time though. So you have a couple spots a month. So definitely.
Thank you for bringing that. I only do 3 live ones a month.
That's time.
Yeah, totally. There's real scarcity on this one. So,
yeah.
All right, cool. Everyone have a great day.
Good to talk to you.
All right. Thanks, Krista.
Bye-bye.